Hi, I'm Chuck Brinkman, and this is the next video in the series of Steps to Home Ownership. Up to this point, we've discussed whether it's better to rent or to buy, how your credit is. We did a credit evaluation video, and we discussed affordability. If you know your credit's good enough and you know you want to buy, how much house can you afford based on your monthly income and the debts that you already have? So that brings us to this fourth video, which is a discussion on location. Once you know how much house you can afford, how do you know where to go to find it? In our area, there's 1.5 million people within 30 to 45 minutes travel time. So which of those houses might I want to buy if I'm a first-time home buyer? Well, there's several approaches to that, and this isn't an all-inclusive list, but I thought it would get us thinking about ways that you may want to go after a home and the location. And so let's look at them. The first approach might be the bullseye approach. This is where you center your search on something that's important to you. It could be your work, where you worship, a school system that your children need to go to or you want them to go to. It could be around a hobby. I've had people call and say, I want your houses that are close to where I can have horses. Or it may be you just want a particular neighborhood. There are some areas where the neighborhoods are just very well laid out, and you may want to be in that neighborhood. So with this bullseye approach, you center your search on whatever's most important to you, and then you just draw a circle around that of a certain radius. You might start with 3 or 5 miles from that bullseye, and you limit your search to that area. Now, your real estate agent can help you with this. They've got computer tools that will provide for you houses within certain distances of whatever address you give them. But the idea being that you want to limit your commute. You really don't want to drive a long way to work or to church or you want to stay in the school system, and you're going to only accept houses within a certain distance of that place or event. So that's kind of the bullseye approach. And you start with a smaller circle, and you just, if you can't find the house you want, you increase your circle size, your radius size, until you can. And that has been often the way that I have done my house searches in the past, is because I don't like to drive very far to work. Then I went into business for myself, and I just made my work close to where I live, but we don't all have that choice. Second one, I'm going to call the best deal and make do. And that's where you don't limit your geographic radius as much, or your area. You just say, I'm going to look out there at all the deals, and I'm going to find a great bargain, and I'll just make do with the distance I have to travel. It's worth it because of the equity I'm getting in the house that I buy. And the third approach might be, I'm going to find the perfect house, and I don't care about the driving distance. I recently sold a house to someone who's in the military, but he really wanted land. He had to make a decision in a hurry, and he ended up buying a house that was about an hour away from where he worked. It was definitely a best house and make do. It was exactly the house he wanted. It had a big backyard. He could shoot his pistols back there, and he had 1.5 acres, and neighbors weren't real close. That's what he wanted, but he had an hour drive to the naval base. So that was somebody that was a best house and make do kind of buyer. I have some friends from church. I was talking with them recently. They're not buying, they're renting. But they said, I've got to be in this school system because my daughter is in a kind of a magnet program so that she can learn to speak Spanish right from the beginning. So that was a bullseye approach. Got to be right there in that school system. So it just depends on which of these approaches works best for you. Now, whichever one it is, I want to encourage you as you begin to consider a neighborhood that you drive that neighborhood. Don't just go the most direct route into a house that you're looking at. Look at the house and drive out. You will not see everything that there is to know about that neighborhood. When you get to the house that you think you might have interest in, drive around it. Look at the neighbor to the back, the neighbors to the side, who's across the street. What's the neighborhood like where people are going to be walking from that neighborhood and going through yours? Are you comfortable with all that? Look for those little signs that have a truck with a line through them, which is basically don't cut through here. I usually look for those signs when I'm trying to cut through a neighborhood. So you want to make sure that you're aware of, it might look like a quiet street, but it's really a thoroughfare at 5 o'clock when everybody's trying to avoid a light. So drive through the neighborhood, spend some time there both during the day and in the evening, and make sure that you're comfortable with all the features of that neighborhood. I also like to talk to the neighbors. I've been known to walk up to houses, knock on the door and say, "Hi, I'm Chuck and I'm thinking about buying in this neighborhood. What can you tell me about it?" And if you just ask that question and shut up, it's amazing what people will tell you about the neighborhood, both good and bad. And then finally, check out the schools if that's relevant to you. My wife and I homeschooled our children for many years, so the school system that we lived in wasn't a big deal because we weren't taking advantage of it. But that may be a concern for you, or you might use private school and it doesn't really matter. But it will likely matter to the people that you eventually sell your house to. So the school system is a big selling point in the price of the house. So these are just a few things to consider with regard to location. Which approach are you going to take? Drive the neighborhood, talk to the neighbors, and check out the schools. In the next video, we'll be talking about how to actually pick the specific house, what to look for, what to avoid, and how to go through and make sure you don't miss things that the seller might be hiding. So we'll look forward to seeing you then.